Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Youth Room podcast. I'm Keith and this is Ryne. Today we're going to be talking about exceeding expectations, how to go above and beyond as a youth leader. So stay tuned. Now, Ryne, we have been the examples of going above and beyond in our youth ministries. We have always gotten it right, and we never get it wrong, and that's why we're here to show everybody else.
Amen.
If you know us, you know that was extremely sarcastic, and we don't believe that about ourselves. So don't turn it off yet.
Yes.
We really want to create content on this podcast for youth leaders to improve, like to really become more effective at one, just personally knowing the Lord and growing their relationship with the Lord. We talk about how to be more effective as youth leaders.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about just basically being evangelistically minded when it comes to youth ministry. And one of those ways that we can be even more effective as youth leaders is to exceed people's expectations, to go above and beyond, to go that extra mile. And in fact, I was really fascinated when I learned about Amazon. They had this thing called the last mile. And the premise was this, that it takes, say they're delivering an item to you. It takes about, say, let's just even all numbers out. It takes $20 to get that item from, say, China, if it was made in China, all the way to a warehouse in America. The crazy thing is, and this is where a lot of companies stopped, was it takes an additional $20 to get that item from the warehouse to your doorstep. But they said, if we can be the best at that last mile from the warehouse to your doorstep, then we will always have a winning edge on our company. And I think, of course, we're not in business. We're not like here to make a bottom dollar or whatever. But I think that mentality has validity, right? Like if we go that extra mile, it makes that extra special even for the students' experience in our ministry. It makes it extra special for the parents to trust us even more with their students, to equip them and to train them into living a missional lifestyle when it comes to gospel advancing ministry. And so today we're going to be talking about that idea of exceeding expectations, to go beyond, to go the last mile, so to speak, of really that extra effort to make things even more effective in ways that we can do that. One of the things that you had said was, just spending time with students outside of youth group. So we all probably have programs that we do weekly. Maybe it's once a week or maybe it's twice a week, where we have maybe an element of small groups, or we have an element of, some kind of worship service type thing, or, or teaching time. What is it that makes the extra mile spending time with students? Like how is that? Have you seen that played out in your ministry?
Well, I think a specific example is we were all kids once, right? And you walk into your classroom, you see your teacher. Okay, well, of course.
You expect to see them there. Yeah.
But when you round the grocery store as a kid and you see your teacher in the grocery store, it's like all of a sudden like a big deal. And it's so funny because when you zoom out, you're like, why is it a big deal? Like, this is somebody you see every day. And it's like, but I saw them in a place that I didn't expect to see them.
Yeah.
And so, kids show up to youth group, they expect to see you there. And so, right or wrong, it almost kind of loses some of its value because they're like, well, of course I'm going to see Keith, like it's youth group. But when you show up to a kid's game or sporting event or a recital or
is
graduation,
the answer just waiting at the grocery store for people?
Yes. Free samples at Costco. Just wait for people to show up.
Yeah.
But no, going to kids, things that matter to them. And now all of a sudden it's like, wow, like I can't believe they came to that. It now becomes a big deal, outside of just that. I mean, we remember that as kids, like when we had a big event in our lives, if somebody came, that meant the world to us.
Yeah. In fact, we wished people that we loved came that didn't sometimes.
Yeah. So I think that's a big thing, is seeing students outside of youth group. Of course, meeting up with them and things like that. But I found a huge win to be just going to their events and games. And the reason is a couple fold. Number one, now I get to sit next to the parents and build relationships with them.
Yeah.
Number two, you can actually see multiple kids at a time. So if you're real smart, you'll line up when they're playing each other.
Yep.
And then number three, as a dad, it's a win-win-win, because now I get to take my son with me, and that is father-son time, where it's like, hey, like I'm spending quality time with my son while also getting to invest in parents, while also getting a win with the kid. It's like, why would I not? And the church pays for my ticket. So it's like, why would I not do this? Like, it makes sense to me. And so that's something that we enjoy doing. And I think our kids have really valued that.
Which, yeah, I recently went to okay, don't hate me for this. You're going to think I'm crazy probably, but I'd never been to a lacrosse game until this year. Is that surprising? Is that
no, because this is
the big deal now.
This is the first year that we've had an athlete. Normally, I try and just go to the school games because then it's also building relationships with schools and things like that. But this is the first year that we had like a lot of lacrosse kids. And so, yeah, I didn't know any of the rules, but I found it kind of entertaining. But the rules make no sense. So
yeah, I didn't quite understand what was going on completely. I had like a commentator, so I had some people sit next to me that knew lacrosse. But I took my son. Per your recommendation.
You have 4, so that is
I took one of my sons, the one that's most in the sport. So Graham, my second son, and so we went to the lacrosse game. He had never been either. I had never been, so he was asking me a question. I'm like, don't know. Don't know. But we formed. It was actually one of our students. He was playing a game, but it was also his birthday, and so it was kind of a special thing. So there was a lot of other students from our ministry that joined in, and it was like. It was awesome. Like it was so much fun. Like, I mean, we were like the only ones in the stands because it was like a, weekday, like, I mean, there was hardly, and it was even raining a little bit. So, but the parents were like blown away that we came. So that was a great opportunity to kind of, go the extra mile to, to show people that we care and like just to see us, he like turned around a couple of times embarrassingly seeing his like cheer squad, like, just, shouting his name. We made signs and stuff. So it was a big deal. And that kind of stuff really does go a long way, and that's probably going to be something he might remember for a long time, just because a lot of us took the effort to come out on his birthday to watch this game. They still lost.
It's okay,
but
you just don't talk to him afterwards.
They had a losing streak. Like they almost won, and then the team like the last quarter came back and beat them. Like they were like up by like 5, which is a lot of points for
in lacrosse. It's not that many, is what I've learned.
Really? They have high scoring games?
Oh yeah.
Really? Okay.
But this isn't a lacrosse podcast.
Yeah. I still don't know a whole lot about lacrosse.
If you played lacrosse, please explain the rules to us.
Yeah, I know that you can't go beyond a certain like line on the field if you have a longer stick.
Correct.
That's about all. Yeah. But I can appreciate any sport, so it was fun to watch. It was still fun to watch.
Yep.
But we didn't have lacrosse. We didn't have a lacrosse team at Brentsville when I was there. Did they when you were there?
We did, but we always made fun of them as baseball players because it was all the kids who got cut from baseball. They went and played lacrosse. It's not that way anymore.
Yeah. Lacrosse is a serious sport now.
Yeah.
All right. So see students outside of youth group. One of the other things that that really adds value, I think, as youth leader, like if you can have a youth leader that just runs programs, that's bare minimum. Mm-hmm. If you have a youth leader that will invest in discipling kids, like even outside of the youth programs, even better. Mm-hmm. But then the next level of going beyond is when you disciple parents. That's like being a coach of coaches. Mm-hmm. Like that's like a leader of leaders. Like so when you've kind of turned that dial and like drawn out a little bit, like, okay, it's more strategic for me to invest in the parents so that when we disciple the students, they come home and there's like, it's not unraveling everything that we just taught them. That really is like where you're cutting butter with a warm knife. Like you're like making more strides when you learn how to disciple and care for parents. And so I've seen that even becoming a parent of, kids that are now, in our youth group, or a student that's in our youth group. My oldest now is in our youth group. It's really shifted my focus. Like of really seeing like parents as a huge partnership, not as, I just need to answer their questions or like, defend myself against like, and I feel like early on in youth ministry and a lot of people that are in youth ministry fall into that trap of like parents are the bad people or they're the ones that complain or that they. And so we want to make sure that we're partnering with them because they're going to have more influence over their kid's life than we are for 2 hours a week or however long we have them for. So what are some other ways that we can go above and beyond as a youth pastor to really get the most out of our youth ministry? We've benefited from this next one, but you want to share it?
Yeah. Connecting with other youth pastors and youth leaders in your area is a huge way. And sadly, this is not something we do well as churches. Because oftentimes the misconception...
So competitive.
Yes. And the misconception is, well, it comes from the business world. But as you said, in a business world, we're all fighting over a limited customer base. There's only so many people who will buy our product. Yeah. When you're in the kingdom, it's like, this is the only thing in the entire world that I guess like water and like air and stuff. But like this is the one thing that there is an unlimited customer base.
There's always supply. Yeah.
There should never be, we're fighting over, pennies when it's like, hey, there's thousands of people who nobody's reaching in our own communities. Yeah. But when you partner with others, I think it does 2 things. It helps your kids see that there's nothing special in the sense of this church is the only one that advances the gospel. Yeah. It's like, no, we are all called to advance the gospel. And then two, I've learned so much from other youth pastors and youth leaders and what they do. And I'm like, that's a great idea. Like, I want to do that. Or, hey, I mean, in a different, standpoint, it's also like, man, like, I feel really bad for them. Like, I'm thankful I don't have to deal with that. And
which is what we were talking about today.
Yeah.
Like, just sharing like our problems. Like, one, it helps you appreciate certain things about your own church. We're like, man, I don't have those problems. But then also, like, you have someone to talk to outside of your context. Absolutely. Like that. Yeah. The camaraderie of just going through similar things, I think has been huge, for our youth leaders in our network. So if you don't have a youth leader network that you know of in your area, what should you do?
You should probably just sit there and do nothing.
Just wait for them to come to you.
You should go to the grocery store.
Wait for the fish jump into your boat. No.
Yes, start one.
So start one, or check on National Network for Youth Ministries. Like, they have made it their mission to form these networks all over the country. Yeah, and so chances are there might be one meeting in your area,
and you just haven't been invited.
Or you just don't know about it. So like that was like literally when I went to go register ours, I found out there was like other ones. They're like, there's another one that meets here. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, I thought it was pretty connected, but So anyway, so there might be different ones that maybe they used to meet and they've stopped meeting, or but I think connecting and partnering with other youth pastors and youth leaders in your area is an often untapped resource that you have, where you can go above and beyond to maximize your impact. This next one is so crucial. And we all know we've been there, and I still struggle with it sometimes, even though I pride myself in, and my wife says this all the time. I'm like, don't set me up for failure. She's like, Keith is so good at memorizing names. Just ask him, anybody that he's ever met, what their name is. And I'm like, I'm starting to forget names faster than I am remembering them now. Yep. And so with that though, knowing someone's name is like, it's so small, but it's so big when it comes to the impact. Like, it's so small as far as like, if you just took some time and you figured out a method of memorizing someone's name, I always try to connect it to someone else or something else that I know with that name. So like, or I'll try to spell it. Like, I'll say like, well, no, and that's like
John.
Kind of fun. Well, and I'm like, well, is it Jon or John? And they're like, John. I'm like, oh, okay, like John Tesh, which they have no idea who is, but I do. You don't even know who John Tesh is. He was a entertainer and anyways. So back in the 90s, way back before you were born.
Before I was born. I was born in 96.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And so with that, like, I would try to connect it to something else or repeat back to what they say, and it just helps me to have the name stick. The reason why I think this is so important is, one, they even say like someone's name is the most beautiful word to them. So like, even if you can repeat their name in a sentence back to them, it's like music to their ears, and it's acknowledgement that you know who they are. Like, that's really, I think a reason why we should, but to be known is a big thing. Like, as a student in today's world, like, to be known is, and that's one thing that we pray for regularly, like with our leaders before we start our youth nights our youth days. Like, we say we want every student to feel known, cared for, welcomed, loved. Like, those things are, crucial to having them and feeling included, like in our youth ministry, and to know them. And we've all been in that situation. I've been in it countless times where someone will come up, what's my name? What's my name? Have you had people ask you that?
I have that. The worst that I have is when somebody comes up to me and says, hey, Ryne, and starts talking. And I'm like, I don't know their name. Yeah. And I'm trying to think of it on the fly.
There are ways that you can kind of like,
I've learned.
It's like, hey, like, what are your initials? Or like, how do you spell your name? Or, like, and they're like, the way that everybody else spells it. And you're like, dang it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are ways that you can, or wait till like someone else brings it up, or it's like,
if you're with somebody else,
like, hey, this is John, and they're like, oh, hi, I'm Sarah. You know, and so, but if they are like, just look at you, and you're like, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Now, I have a question for knowing everybody's name.
Yeah.
Pros and cons to doing name tags at youth group, because we're at a point now where we're like, we don't know all the kids' names, but at the same time, sometimes it just feels a little bit too formal.
Yeah. So I have some thoughts on this. We do use name tags. Like, we check in and they print a name tag and they stick it on their, shirt or whatever. Not all students put it to where it's visible.
Yeah.
And, like, they put it down their leg to be cool. And and then it's even more awkward if you look down at the leg trying to find their name or whatever. the cool thing about that is that they forget that they're wearing a name tag. So it really helps you.
Yes.
Especially if you have lots of students and you're not as familiar with every single person to say, oh, hey, James. And they're like, oh, hey, like they just know that but like you might have just taken a quick glance down at their name tag. But there is a disadvantage sometimes where you depend on the name tags, and when they're not wearing it or they haven't checked in yet and they greet you, and you're like, I know I knew your name because I looked at your name tag, but I don't anymore because I didn't memorize it. Yeah. So I would always encourage you to memorize it, and the name tags can be a helpful thing for you, but try not to depend on the name tags. I think that's the key. Okay. So 2 quick stories about this that memorable, like going beyond, like way beyond my expectations. So I had the president of my Bible college. He wasn't the president when I first attended, but he became the president, I think either the very end or right after I graduated. But I knew him. His son was a classmate of mine at the college. And I had met him. He was a professor there when I was there, and he was a great guy. Like, so his name's Bill Jones. He's the president again now. So he actually like transitioned into a different role, but then they just, brought him back on as president of the college. It's CIU, so Columbia International University. Great man. And I remember I had visited the school, like as a prospective student, and I'd met him among other people. And it was just in passing. Like, it was just like, oh, this is Bill Jones. Like, Dr. Bill Jones, he does this for the seminary or the college. And I was like, oh, okay. And he'd ask me some questions like, oh, where are you from? Just like small talk, like nothing. So then months later, like I had committed to going to school the whole summer. This was like my, I think, either junior or senior year of college or of high school when I'd visited. And then like I actually ended up going to the school, and I ran into him in the cafeteria, like one of the first weeks of the school. And he goes, hey, Keith. And I was like, what? And like at the moment I was like, there's no possible way that he could have memorized my name. And I was like, am I wearing a name tag? And I wasn't. And I was like, how did he know my name? Like, I mean, how did he remember my name from just meeting me in passing, like literally months before? And I'm sure he meets a lot of students, so I was blown away by that. Like, to the point where I'm like, I hope you become the president of the school one day. I didn't say that, but I'm just like, when he became the president, I'm like, that dude loves the Lord and he loves people like enough to know their names.
They said Jerry Falwell Sr., he could do that and he could quote their phone number. He said there was one of the ladies I knew, her husband was on the board of trustees, and he would see her and he'd just mention her name, and then he would just rattle off her home phone number. And it's like,
that's creepy.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, that's a lot of numbers though.
Yeah.
And another time, so this wasn't directly with me. So like, David Platt is our pastor here at McLean Bible that I work at. And when he was interviewing, or like when he was like candidating for, the position, like he came to our location. So I'm at a different location, Prince William location. He came out there to answer any questions, like to meet with the congregation and just see if anybody had any questions, before they voted and stuff on him. And after that, like we as a staff, we were like, well, let's, he's going to be out here. Like, it's gonna be a long day. So like, why don't we just have like, a lunch prepared for him, and we just hosted it at our house. And so he came over to our house. So we got to eat lunch with him. It was a great opportunity just to kind of get to know him more too. And of course, like our kids were there. So he met the kids, whatever. So then like the next year, like we were at an event, and he had, obviously been voted in as our pastor and stuff. And we were at an event at our Tyson's location where he happened to be. And I just had a quick question for him. So I went up to him, and our boys were there with us too. And I said, I asked him a question. I go, oh yeah, like, sorry, like this is my son, Hudson. I started introducing. He's like, no, I remember. And he quoted, I mean, he said all the names of my boys. And I was like, I forgot that he had met them for one, but then like the fact that he remembered all of their names, like, so a staff person, like, and their kids, like I was blown away by that. So just going that extra mile, like, I mean, and David's been really excellent at that too. Like I don't want to put him on the spot. So like, if you do know him, or if you, have only met him once, don't quiz him on your name maybe. But for that, like, I mean, he meets a lot of people, he travels a lot, he like knows a lot of people. So the fact that he knew our kids' names was a big, like, impressive thing. Like, we were like, man, how does he do that? So go above and beyond by memorizing their name, knowing everyone's name. And then this last one is crucial. That has to do with the care of your students.
Yeah.
Know when they miss. Know when they miss, and follow up with them to see if everything's okay.
So they feel guilty, right?
Not so they feel guilty, but oftentimes, and you may have seen this before, where someone misses youth group, and maybe you haven't quite noticed, or maybe you just made a mental note, but you didn't really follow up with them, and then you run into them in public. What's the first thing they're going to say? Do you know what they try to explain?
Why wasn't it easy?
Why they weren't there?
I was like, that's what I thought. I was like, is there something else?
Yes. Okay. So they, like, it's like they're like, as soon as you're aware of them, like outside of the context of just, so just making that awareness of like, hey, I just, and this is what we do for phone calls. So we'll call the parents if we know students are missing like for a week or two, or, sometimes just 1 week, or sometimes it's a couple weeks in a row or whatever. And there's ways that you can do that. If you have a really large ministry, you can run reports in your database where it would spit out a report saying who's missed the past couple weeks, or maybe they haven't checked in, which is even more awkward because they're like, hey, we noticed you haven't been here. They're like, I was there, I just didn't check in. You're like, I should have known that, because so anyways, but usually we'll recognize when people are missing, be like, hey, where's John, or whatever. So we'll call them up or send them an email, send the parents an email and say, hey, we noticed that John wasn't here last week. We just want to check in, make sure everything's okay. Like, you guys traveling, or is anyone sick or anything like that? You guys need any meals? Like, and they're like, how did you even notice that he was, that is just a little tiny thing that you can do that really goes the extra mile when it comes to caring for people, because when you notice that they're gone, it's a big deal. Testimony for this. So I belonged to a gym where I walked in. Every time I walked in, the person at the front desk greeted me. They had no idea who I was. And to test this theory, I got finished working out one time, and I went to go to the car to grab my gym bag to go back in and get a shower and stuff before I headed to work. Went back out, came back in. They go, hey, how's it going? Welcome today. I'm like, you didn't even notice that I just walked out 5 minutes ago. And I didn't say that, but I was like, I didn't feel known or cared for. I was like, now I'm part of a gym now where I walk in, hey, Keith, how's it going? How was your week? Your kids doing okay? Big difference. And just that knowing aspect of being part of a community rather than just a number, and so with that, of course, we as the church have so much more to offer when it comes to care and shepherding, and to know someone is so crucial. So those are some ways that we can exceed expectations, go above and beyond as a youth leader. And now we're coming to our rapid fire questions.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. Favorite and least favorite. So this is almost like a two-parter question. I think I just made that up. That's not a word, is it? Parter? Two-parter question?
I don't think so.
We're going with it. We're just letting it boil.
If you know, you know. If you know, the real ones know.
Letting it boil. Just let it boil. All right. Go back to previous episodes and find out what we mean. And we'll give you a prize if you can tell us what that means. Because that means you're listening to our previous episodes. So put in the comments if you know what let it boil means and refers to. All right.
I hope it doesn't mean something else.
Yeah, what we say it means.
Yes,
at least,
there you go.
Yeah, there was a story in a previous episode where we talked about this.
Yeah.
All right, so favorite and least favorite student activities or events to attend. You mean outside of youth group? Okay. I know these. I know these. There's some good ones. Okay.
Yeah. Favorite is really anything competitive that is well done. So for instance, I don't really care what sport it is. As long as it's competitive and it's not just terrible quality, which sometimes, when you're working with kids, sometimes it can be. My least favorite.
I mean, if we're on the same page, I know exactly what you're going to say, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if you've experienced this too.
I have. I've been to a middle school chorus concert. I don't know if that's what you're referring to.
No,
that's what I'm referring to.
Not actually.
So
no, that's not the worst.
Mine is, I don't like graduations either, but I do it for kids. But choir concerts and orchestra concerts. It's not because I don't like watching our kids. It's because you have to sit through all the other kids that you don't know, and you're like, what is this? And it's a real bad look. I ask Kathleen all the time, can I bring a book to this one?
Yeah.
She's like, no, you can't bring a
book. I will gladly attend a chorus or a play or anything other than the one that I'm going to share.
All right.
Any day of the week.
All right. I'm interested to hear what it is.
All right. So the best one, I think sporting events, especially if they're during nice weather.
Yeah.
Now if we're just sitting in the rain, that's no fun. But sporting events that during nice weather, that's the best. So that's my favorite. Least favorite, awkward birthday parties.
You've been invited to birthday parties?
Yeah.
Of students?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never been invited to a student's birthday party.
Okay. So let's translate this to sometimes even grad parties.
Yeah. Okay. Grad parties. Yes.
So, and here's why. This is why it's my least favorite, is because you can't really be as anonymous. Like a sporting event, you can walk in and like like you can see that, and then you can choose to like congratulate the student or the chorus singer or whatever, and but with birthday parties, you're sitting around and it can be so awkward because like if you show up and there's like not everybody there yet, or like there's no one else that or like you're just sitting around and it's just like it's very awkward. Like grad parties, like.
You're talking ones where it's like they might not be necessarily a church family and you like don't know anybody there. And
yeah, I guess it does depend on it. Yeah. I just feel like the ones that I've invited to, maybe it was like out of obligation, not like because like I knew the family and or like they, in other words, they felt obligated. Like, oh, well, he's the youth guy. Like he needs to come to the grad party, whatever. And I show up and like I don't know anybody else there except for the student.
Yes. Okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'll rubber stamp that.
And then you don't want to just hang around the student the whole time because
everybody
wants to talk to the student. So you're like. Yeah, like and so it can be very awkward.
Oh, I just go in, say hi, make sure everybody, who sees me, and then I'm like, all right, on to the next one.
Yeah, so there is an art to that. You have to always have something to go to.
Yep.
Afterwards, you have to have an out.
Or if you have a kid, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Because you're like,
hey, nap time. I'm holding a ticking time bomb right here. Yep. That's okay. So for anybody that's ever invited me to a grad party that's watching,
it was Keith's favorite.
I apologize. No,
yours wasn't bad.
I would say you can go to a fun grad party or a fun birthday party or like get together. But like usually if it's a birthday party, it's like a middle school kid's birthday party. Like they're going to like Sky Zone or something. Like that's never happened. Never.
No.
You're just not. It's not fun, I guess.
That's fine. I'll continue to be not fun.
Well, and I think, and you have to realize this too, like if you are being invited to a birthday party, it means that the kid doesn't have as many close friends.
That's true.
Maybe they've just moved to the area or they just don't, so, or they, have a compliment. They think you're fun to invite you to a birthday party. So
there you go.
All that to say, the more intimate environments are way more awkward than like going to a school event or whatever. That's a lot more fun. Okay, so let's get to sorry. Another question. I was about to jump right to the 1 minute questions. Another question for the rapid fire. Should youth ministries take the summer off?
No.
Of course not. Okay, so let me caveat this because
if you have 4 camps in a row
things are looking different for our ministries during the summer.
Yes.
Does yours change at all? You still do weekly programming?
We still meet Wednesday night and Sunday night. Of course, we miss some because we have our vacation Bible school or summer camper things. We don't have small groups during our Wednesday night programming.
Okay,
that shifts a little bit different.
Okay.
But it always baffles me that the time that the kids have the most flexibility and availability is the time where we're like, and I think a lot of times I've even seen people be like, well, we're just not going to get as big of a crowd. And it's like, well, then what does that say about the kids who are going to come?
Yeah, it's worth the students that come. So we don't do small groups. I give my leaders the summer off as far as like the weekly programming that we have. And I always wrestle with this because it might look different, depending on this. Like right out of COVID, we met throughout the summer because I was like, we haven't met in so long. I was like, we need to build that momentum and keep consistency going. Like this summer it's a lot more sporadic than I was hoping for because of schedule, because of camps and stuff. But yeah, we are, we're also doing something on Wednesday nights, like as a whole church that we're trying to include the students into. And so, and like, I'll be preaching during 2 of those. And so it's not like, we're not doing anything. It's just like, we're kind of combining and we're actually doing it in our student ministry space. So it's going to be like almost like a youth ministry feel, but it's going to include the whole church or our whole location. But I would say, yes, for consistency's sake, meet during the summer. Don't do anything. But at the same time, it might look different.
Of course.
Like give your leaders maybe some time.
But make sure that
structure different. Make sure you have a leaders.
Well, and make sure that the gospel is being presented because so many times people are like, we just do a lot of activities or events, and I'm not saying they're not sharing the gospel, but don't fall into that trap either, where it's like.
So we're gonna have a guys' night, and we're gonna have fun and do guy stuff, whatever. But I'm gonna share the gospel, So like, so in other words, don't just replace it with fellowship events, but like use it, So even if you think that every student, I've had students that I'm like, why are you raising your hand saying that you're wanting to commit your life to Christ right now? And they're like, well, because it finally just made sense. I'm like, you've been coming to church for a while.
Yep.
So in other words, don't disregard the opportunity to share the gospel even during off events, so to speak, like where they're not typical. So yes, they should not take the summer off.
Yep.
Okay, 1 minute questions. Ooh, these are good. 1 minute questions. First one for Ryne. Do we have our timer up?
We do.
Okay. Ryne.
Yes.
Are some sins worse than others?
Not in God's eyes, but in terms of earthly effects, yes. So the easiest way to explain that is, of course, Romans 3:23, we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death. And so we know that any sin is enough to separate us from God, and we have all fallen short. But the best way to look at this is in Matthew 5, Jesus says that if anybody looks on a woman with lust, he has committed adultery with her in his heart. And so we see that in God's eyes, lust and adultery are both disobedient to God. They are both sins. But if we play that out in our actual life, if I lust after somebody, that is sinful, that is wrong, but it has much different effects than if I actually go and commit adultery. That has a lot bigger damage on my actual life. And so sin in God's eyes is all equal, and we should be mindful of that, but also understanding that different sins will have different earthly effects on our lives as well.
Well put. Well put.
Thank you.
So consequences can differ, but all sin separates us from God and
Correct.
leads to death.
Yes. Yep.
All right. Okay, so you have one for me.
I do. Keith, can somebody lose their salvation?
If someone truly has their salvation, I don't believe they can lose it. So we see in 1 John 5:13, I write these things to you who believe in the name Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life. John 5:24, truly, truly, I say to you, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. He does not come into judgment, but he has passed from death to life. The very terminology that Jesus used in his conversation with Nicodemus is to be born again. And you can not reverse the birth. I think the physical birth, he thought it was so literal that he's like, how can I enter my mother's womb again? And they're like, no. He's saying you spiritually rebirth, and there's no reversal process from birth. So because of those reasons, I believe that if you're truly saved, you will not lose your salvation. There's nothing that can separate you from the love of God, and that you're secure in your eternal security because of those reasons.
Very good. Very good. Sweet.
Well, that concludes another episode of Beyond the Youth Room podcast. We have been so blessed to be able to speak into your guys' life. If you've received value from this, we invite you to share with other people. It's the best compliment that you can give to us is if you share it with other people. Of course, if you can take a moment and review us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to this from, or if you can just take a moment, it doesn't take any extra money or time from you, just to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. We do understand that there's a lot of people that still view our content that aren't subscribed on our YouTube. It always helps us to get seen by more people and to benefit others with the content that we produce. So we just appreciate the time that you could take to do those things. Additionally, we have a free gift for you. We have really developed a student missionary training that almost 1,000 people have used since January 1st of 2024. And we want to gift that to you. It's called our Student Missionary Training for Edge Clubs, where we want to equip your students to know how to share the gospel using gospel urgency and fluency and gospel strategy to reach their friends at their public middle or high schools in their area. So you can check out this training beforehand. You can look at it, and if you think it's awful, then you don't have to show it to your students, but you can listen to it, watch it. You can show it to your students to train them up to reach their schools for Christ. And you can go to edgeclub.org/training to access that for free. Additionally, we've talked about resources on this podcast where we've created resources and we're continuing to create resources that would benefit you. We update it pretty regularly. You can access that resource vault for free at edgeclub.org/vault. And you can sign up there for free and have access to it forever, even as we add stuff to it. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and we'll see you on the next episode.